ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محذرون وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النحار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا شريك لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محذرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكحون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أحد إليكم يا بني آدم ألا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لتمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فعنا يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نعمره ننقصه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللنا لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محذرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان عنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقا قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون صل على محمد وآل محمد الفاتحة
اللهم صل على محمد शहीद बगदाद का जनाजा शहीद बगदाद का जनाजा मजदूर उठा कर लाते हैं मजदूर उठा कर लाते हैं बगदाद के पुल पर काज़िम का किसने ये जनाजा रखा है बगदाद के पुल पर काज़िम का किसने ये जनाजा रखा है अफसोस के मौला का लाशा अफसोस के मौला का लाशा जंजीर सितम में जकरा है बगदाद के पुल पर काज़िम का किसने ये जनाजा रखा है बगदाद के पुल पर काज़िम का किसने ये जनाजा रखा है पहले तो लोई ने जहर दिया फिर लाश لاش کو تنہا چھوڑ دیا، پہلے تو لائی نے زہر دیا، پھر لاش کو تنہا چھوڑ دیا، رونے کے لیے اس لاش پر، رونے کے لیے اس لاش پر، بھائی نہ بہن نہ بیٹا ہے، بغداد کے پل پر کاظم کا کس نے یہ جنازہ رکھا ہے، بغداد کے پل پر کاظم کا کس نے یہ جنازہ رکھا ہے۔ اس قید ستم میں بھی مولا رہتے تھے مصلی پر ہر دم، اس قید ستم میں بھی مولا رہتے تھے مصلی پر ہر دم، بے جرم نمازی قتل ہوا، بے جرم نمازی قتل ہوا، رو رو کے مصلی کہتا ہے، بغداد کے پل پر کاظم کا کس نے یہ جنازہ رکھا ہے، بغداد کے پل پر کاظم کا کس نے یہ جنازہ رکھا ہے۔ ایسی بھی غریبی دنیا میں کیا لوگ کسی پر دیکھی ہے، ایسی بھی غریبی دنیا میں کیا لوگ کسی پر دیکھی ہے، افسوس جنازہ کاظم کا، افسوس جنازہ کاظم کا، مزدوروں سے اٹھوایا آیا ہے، بغداد کے پل پر کاظم کا اس نے یہ جنازہ رکھا ہے، بغداد کے پل پر کاظم کا کس نے یہ جنازہ رکھا ہے۔ پیوست بدن میں ہے کریا، لوہار سے بولے یہ مولا، پیوست بدن میں یہ کریا، لوہار سے بولے یہ مولا، آہستہ کاٹ یہ زنجیریں، آہستہ کاٹ یہ زنجیریں، لاشاں یہ صدائیں دیتا ہے، بغداد کے پل پر کاظم کا کس نے یہ جنازہ رکھا ہے، بغداد کے پل پر کاظم کا کس یہ جنازہ رکھا ہے۔ مظلوم میرے مولا پر، تجھ پر اولاد رو نہ سکی، مظلوم میرے مولا تجھ پر اولاد پہ تیری رو نہ سکی، بغداد نہیں دو عالم میں، بغداد نہیں دو عالم ہے، اب ماتم تیرا ہوتا ہے، بغداد کے پل پر کاظم کا کس نے یہ جنازہ رکھا ہے، بغداد کے پل پر کاظم کا کس نے یہ جنازہ رکھا ہے۔ افسوس کے مولا کا لاشا، افسوس کے مولا کا لاشا، زنجیر ستم میں جکڑا ہے، بغداد کے پل پر کاظم کا کس نے یہ جنازہ رکھا ہے، کس نے یہ جنازہ رکھا ہے۔ صلوات اللہ۔
Before we begin, if we can recite Surah Al-Fatiha for all our marhumin, inshaAllah. Rahimallahu man qara'a Surah Al-Fatiha. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا والشفيع لذنوبنا وتبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين وفقنا الله وإياكم بعلم وعمل صالح إن شاء الله بذكر الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد أما بعد فقد قال الله عز وجل في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وكونوا مع الصادقين آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم Respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah accept your amal during these holy nights, the nights of Rajab, inshallah. May Allah accept our amal and our hajats, inshallah. When we look at the biography of the holy Imam alayhi salam, Imam al-Kadhim salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. They say that when the sixth Imam left this world, it was very ambiguous for the Shias to recognize the Imam of their time, the new Imam of the time. And so what happened was a lot of people began to question as to who the new Imam was. You had the son of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, Abdullah ibn Aftah. Abdullah ibn Aftah nominated himself as the new Imam. So when the people of Medina, they came to find out who the successor, the Shia specifically, when they wanted to find out who the successor of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam was, they would usually go to the house of the Imam alayhi salam. Imam Sadiq's house was famous in that regards. There was a member in that house, and Abdullah ibn Fath used to sit on that member, and then he would tell the people that I am the new Imam after my father. Now, Abdullah ibn Aftah, who was younger than Ismail, but he was older than Imam Kadhim alayhi salatu wasalam. So they say that whenever the Shias would come towards the house of Imam as-Sadiq, they would question whether, they would try and discover who the new Imam was. They say there was a delegation that came all the way from Nishapur. Now Nishapur had a considerable Shia population, and so a delegation was sent towards the city of Medina. Before the delegation left the city of Nishapur, they came towards one of the people traveling, and they said to him that, look, we have khums to give, so we'll give you the sum of money, go and give it to the Imam of our time. Imam Sadiq has passed away, find out who the new Imam is, and when you find out who the new Imam is, give him the khums that we have to give him. So the man replies to the people of Nishapur, says, how do I know who the new Imam is? So the people sent or gave him some questions. They said, look, we've sat down with Imam as-Sadiq alayhi salam before, and we had a few questions to ask him. Go towards Medina, sit down with certain personalities and ask them these same questions. If the answers that they give you is exactly the same as the answers that were given by Imam as-Sadiq, then understand that that's the new Imam. And number two, when you turn towards that person, tell him how much money there is in the pouch. You know how much amount you're carrying, but ask the Imam, the new Imam, whoever he is, how much money there is in the pouch. And if he gives you the right figure, then know that that person is the Imam as well. So that delegation was sent towards the city of Medina. When they came towards Medina, they sat down in the house of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. They met with Abdullah ibn Aftah, and they had a series of questions, and they asked and presented those series of questions to Abdullah ibn Aftah. Abdullah ibn Aftah gets them all wrong. Now they're in the state of worry. So hold on a second. The answers that Abdullah ibn Aftah has given us is different to the answers of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. Who is the new Imam? Eventually they come across Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam, they sit down with him, and then they present all of the questions to Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam. Imam al-Kadhim answers these questions exactly how his father answered them. Word by word, exactly the same answers were given. And then they said to him, how much money do we have in this pouch? And of course the Imam alayhi salam gives them the right figure, and then they are happy to give on or to pass on the khums to him. And then of course they give bay'at to the Imam, and they realize that Imam Kadhim alayhi salam is the new Imam. Now, with regards to this particular narration, this narration highlights a few things for us. It highlights the ability of the Imam alayhi salam, or his access to ilm al-ghaib. Of course, this is a point of contention within our communities now, isn't it? Whether the Imam alayhi salam has the ability to have knowledge of the unseen or no. You'll find that there are some amongst us who say that no, the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt, they have no access to ilm al-ghaib whatsoever. Whereas this hadith tells us otherwise. Now, let me bring your attention towards another hadith. A hadith narrated by Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. It's a very interesting hadith. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, they say that one day there was his companion Abu Basir and some other companions as well. General companions, not those tight, close companions of the Imam alayhi salam. The Imam came towards their presence and he was in a state of distress. He was quite disturbed. And then he turns towards his companions and he says to them, I can't believe that my companions think that I have ilmul ghaib. I've never claimed that I have ilmul ghaib. So why is it that they're going around saying that the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt have ilmul ghaib? So the Imam was very much disturbed. He was perturbed by the belief of some of his followers. Now here there's two things that are being spoken of by Imam Sadiq alayhi salam that needs to be recognized by all of us. We need to acknowledge this. The first thing that the Imam is explaining, he says that look, ilm al-ghaib belongs to Allah and Allah only. True or no? Knowledge of the unseen belongs to Allah. All power belongs to Allah. All of wisdom belongs to Allah. All of knowledge, forget it being seen or unseen, belongs to Allah. But Allah, does He not have the power to share that knowledge with the people? If Allah is Hakim, all-wise, then He can take some of His wisdom and give it to whom He chooses. If Allah is Qadir, for example, Al-Qadir, He is all-powerful, maybe He can take some of His power and share it with the people, with the chosen personalities. Can He not? Of course He can. Likewise, when it comes to the knowledge of the unseen, Allah has knowledge of the unseen. But can He take this power and share it with certain personalities or no? Of course. The Imam here, when he says that we don't have the power of the knowing the unseen, it means that we don't have independent power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Only Allah has knowledge of the unseen. If He wishes to share some of that with us, so be it. The second thing that the Imam alayhi salam clarifies, within this particular hadith, he says very clearly, or he implies very clearly, that we, the Ahlul Bayt, we don't live a life that is supernatural. The conditions of our lifestyle is just like yours, just as how you and I live. It's not like the Imam wakes up in the morning, he's hungry, he performs a miracle, and all of a sudden there's a lavish meal from the kingdoms of heaven. It's not like if the Imam wants to, for example, enhance his wealth and richness, he uses ilm al-ghaib and he amasses certain wealth. No, the Imam alayhi salam, he lives the way you and I live. The conditions of their life is the same as our conditions. Except when Allah gives them the power to perform miracles or to have knowledge of the unseen, it is only when Islam is challenged. Therefore, when you come across many of the narrations where the Imams speak about the future, when the Imam begin to, for example, perform certain miracles, it's because Islam was challenged at the time. And to preserve the true message of the religion of Islam, they had to perform certain miracles at that moment in time. Just as how the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala perform miracles in their time. When it comes to the positions of the Imam, when we say that the Imams have ilm al-ghaib, it doesn't mean that they are now elevated to the position of Allah. No one mentions that. No one believes in that. Just because Allah has given them some power of ilm al-ghaib doesn't mean that they are now in the same position as Allah. We don't believe that the Imams are at the position of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The ghulat, what they did was, the biggest mistake that they did was, they elevated the position of the Imam to the position of Allah. But then at the same time, we also believe that the Imams are not on the same position as you and I. The ghulat went to one extreme. The muqassir, those who belittled the position of the Imam to our level, they went to the other extreme. The Imam is somewhere in between, just as how the prophets of Allah are somewhere in between. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So you find that when you examine the life of Imam Kadhim alayhi salam, you find that Imam al-Kadhim throughout in some of his interactions with his companions, as we'll come to examine in a bit, you find that he begins to enclose or disclose certain unseen aspects of reality for his companions to preserve their lives. And that's very important because, again, remember, some of his companions were such that the Imam alayhi salam had to disclose and give them certain information that otherwise they would have not known, to preserve their lives, to preserve the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. So in tonight's discussion, what I want to discuss specifically with regards to the life of Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam is the effect of his knowledge, or the importance of moral intelligence according to the madrasa of Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam, and then secondly, the effect of his knowledge in the hearts of the people. We begin with the first area of discussion. The importance of moral intelligence in the life of Imam al-Kadhim, according to the madrasa of Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam. When we speak about the A'immat al-Athhar, it is essential and very important for us to understand that their responsibility was not just to give knowledge to the people. They weren't, for example, a reservoir of knowledge that they used to just give to the people. When it comes to fiqh, when it comes to ahkam, when it comes to theology, when it comes to different areas of religion. No. Their responsibility was to nurture their companions. And this goes back towards the wasiyah of Imam Baqir alayhi salam to his son Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. Imam Baqir, before he leaves the world, he turns to his son and he says to him, "My son, look after our companions. Because there are those who are interested in fiqh, there are those who are interested in theology, there are those who are interested in mathematics, for example. There are those who are interested in chemistry. Nurture them based on their expertise. Don't just give them information, raw information for them to just memorize and then live their lives. No, nurture them. Nurture them academically, nurture them spiritually as well. Nurture them on a moral level. With the increment of knowledge, there has to be an increment of akhlaq. With the increment of knowledge, as much as knowledge grows, akhlaq has to also be there accompanying knowledge. Knowledge without akhlaq is meaningless. Likewise, akhlaq without knowledge is meaningless. So the Imam alayhi salam begins to examine, or he begins to teach the religion of Islam, but then he nurtures his companions very carefully. For example, one of them went by the name of Abdullah ibn Jundub. Abdullah ibn Jundub, when you read his biography, he was considered to be one of the thuqat, one of the greatest, most trustworthy companions of Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam. Abdullah ibn Jundub, there's an interesting narration narrated by Ali ibn Ibrahim al-Qummi, famous personality, one of our Shi'i scholars. His father Ibrahim ibn Hashim. So Ali narrates from his father Ibrahim. Now they were contemporaneous at the time of Imam al-Rida, Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam, and so on and so forth. He says, I met Abdullah ibn Jundub on the day of Arafah, in the plains of Arafah. Of course, the day of Arafah is a spiritual day. For those of you who've been for Hajj, it is a day of dua, it is a day of repentance, a day of spirituality. He says, when I met Abdullah ibn Jundub, he was reciting whatever he was reciting on the day of Arafah. His hands were like this, facing the sky, facing the heavens. And he was crying, and he was profusely crying. The tears were flowing from his eyes. When I saw all of the Ubbad, all of the different worshippers on the day of Arafah, there was no one like him. He stood out. He struck out. He was crying. The tears were flowing from his eyes. It soaked his beard to the extent that the tears were now dropping on the ground. He struck out from all of the different worshippers that were there. When everyone left, when the day of Arafah finished or the time of A'mal finished, I came towards him. When I came towards him, I said to him, And I said to him, I said, Abdullah, what were you thinking about? Clearly, the way you worshipped was not the way others worshipped. And when I saw you in comparison to all the others, you were different. What were you thinking about? What were you praying for that you cried so and so, to such an extent? Abdullah ibn Jundab replies, he says, I'll tell you one thing. Never did I pray for myself. I did not pray for myself. Not one word. I reserved all of my hajats and all of my du'as to pray for my mu'mineen, my brothers in faith. He says the reason why is because I have heard a tradition from Abu al-Hasan, Imam Kadhim alayhi salam, say to me one day, he said, Ya Abdullah, if a believer prays for another believer in his absence, then there is a call that comes from the arsh of God. O worshipper, O invoker, through your dua, because you are praying for your mu'min brother in his absence, for every word that you have uttered, there will be 100,000 rewards coming towards you. And then he says to him, he says, listen, I have two things in my hand, two choices. Either I pray for my mu'min brother in his absence, and then I get all of these rewards, and I know that Allah will accept my a'mal and my hajat, or I pray for myself. And he says, I'll tell you one thing. If I pray for myself 100,000 times, I'm still unsure whether Allah will grant me my hajat or no. So I would rather focus on praying for my mu'min brothers in their absence, because I know that Allah will reward me, and at the same time my hajats are accepted as well. This is the tarbiyah of Imam Kadhim alayhi salam. It's not selfish. It's not pray about me, ask for my own hajat. Sometimes we need to utilize and use some of our hajats for the brothers in our community as well, especially those who are going through hard times. This is one example, Abdullah ibn Jundab, nurtured by the madrasa of Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam. It's not just about amassing great knowledge and information and then using that in your life. No, sometimes akhlaq has a role to play. Focus on the people around you as well. The second is Ali ibn Yaqtin. Ali ibn Yaqtin, very interestingly, very, very interestingly, there's a lot of information with regards to Ali ibn Yaqtin. They say Ali ibn Yaqtin, he was in a position of great power. Ali ibn Yaqtin was in a position of great power in the sense that he was seen as a wazir of Harun al-Rashid. Harun al-Rashid, he becomes the king, he becomes the leader of the Muslim empire. You see, what's interesting about Harun al-Rashid is when you refer to Western academics and you read the biography of Harun, he was seen as the greatest caliph. And the reason being is because he was the catalyst, he was the one who actually engaged the Muslim Ummah, expanded the Muslim Ummah, that led the Muslim empire towards the golden ages. When you examine the golden age of Islam, full of scholars, polymaths, for example, this was a great time for the religion of Islam. Islam was a dominant civilization in the world. But at the same time, and this was created during the time of the Abbasids. But at the same time, the Abbasids were the killers of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. When you refer to our scholars, they say, yes, it is true that at that time, it was the golden age of Islam, materialistically. Materialistically, Islam was dominant, but spiritually, there was a massive void. And the reason is because the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt were slaughtered, they were butchered one after the other. From the time of Imam Sadiq all the way down to Imam Hassan al-Askari, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. Now, Ali ibn Yaqtin, very interestingly, they say he was a vizier of Harun al-Rashid. When he got the job to be part of the Abbasid Caliphate, he came towards Imam Kadhim alayhi salam and he sought permission. He said, Yabna Rasulillah, look, I've got a job. It's a very lucrative job, but it's working for the Zalimeen. The Imam says, Ali, we know who you are. Go work for them. You have my permission. So the fuqaha here, this is a very interesting discussion. The fuqaha said, can you work for the Zalimeen? If there's a government that are, of course, oppressing the Muslims, can you work for them actively and earn a wage from them? The fuqaha said, if the Imam alayhi salam gives you permission, or someone who represents the Imam of the time, then yes, you have the permission to go work for them. Otherwise, you don't have the right to work for them. Ali ibn Yaqtin was one of these personalities. He was given permission directly by Imam Kadhim alayhi salam. So he goes and he begins to work. He had a low-level paying job, and then slowly he kind of made his way up the ladder, and all of a sudden he was seen as the wazir, one of the close confidants of Harun al-Rashid. Now, very interestingly, in history, they say that some of the servants that used to work in the palace, they accused Ali ibn Yaqtin to be a Shia of Imam Musa alayhi salam, of Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam. So they would come to the likes of Harun and they would say, look, we are concerned for you because we've realized that Ali ibn Yaqtin is a Shia of Imam Kadhim alayhi salam. So there's a very interesting narration or event that takes place. They say that Harun one day gives a very expensive black cloak, like a black abba, with, the golden seams in it. Very expensive material, very expensive piece of clothing, worth thousands of dinars, as a gift to Ali ibn Yaqtin. What does Ali do? Ali takes the cloak, he packs it up, and he gives it to Imam Kadhim alayhi salam. He says, this is my gift to you. It's a prized possession that I have in my hands, but I'll give it to you. When he sends the gift to Imam Musa alayhi salam, Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam, Imam Kadhim repacks it and sends it back. Return to sender immediately. And he writes a letter as well. Ali ibn Yaqtin receives the gift, he gets his gift back, and then with that letter, he reads the letter. The letter reads, Imam al-Kadhim tells Ali ibn Yaqtin, he says, look, keep this to yourself. Keep this with you. Don't give it to me. Because later on, the same cloak will save your life. And as for the letter, destroy the letter and make sure no one reads it. And so Ali ibn Yaqtin takes this black cloak, he puts it in a box, takes the box, locks it, and puts it in his chambers. A few weeks later, one of the servants working in the palace comes towards Harun, and he says to him, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, I've just realized, by the way, if you don't know, that Ali has just given your gift, your most prized possession, to Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam. And that tells me one thing, that he is the Shia of Imam al-Kadhim. Harun is enraged. He's furious. He says, are you sure about this? He says, I'm positive. Ali ibn Yaqtin has given his cloak away. So he says, go fetch Ali. The servant goes and he brings Ali. Ali comes towards Harun al-Rashid. And then Harun says to him, Ya Ali ibn Yaqtin, where is that gift that I gave you? He says, what gift? He says, the cloak that I gave you. Where is it? He says, it's in my chambers. He says, if it's in your chambers, then bring it to me. So Ali tells one of the servants, he gives him the keys. He says, go to my chambers, go into this area, this location. You'll find a box, bring that box. The servant goes, brings the box, he comes back. He has the box in his hands. He says, Ya Harun, Ya Amir, this is the box, this is the cloak. He says, open the box. He opens the box and the cloak is there. The cloak was infused with some attar. He said, I mixed it with attar so that it smells nice. I kept it infused in this box. Harun then looks towards the servant and he is furious. He then dismisses Ali ibn Yaqtin. The servant, it wasn't a happy ending for him. Harun, what he does is he orders the servant to be lashed 1,000 times. Imam, ilm al-ghayb. Some say, well, how does the Imam have power to knowledge of the unseen? When it comes to the preservation of the religion of Islam, knowledge of the unseen is used and utilized to support the Shia and to preserve the religion of Islam. Ali ibn Yaqtin was a scholar. Don't forget that. He wasn't just a person who used to work in the government. He was a scholar in his own right. He narrated many ahadith of Imam Kadhim alayhi salam. He wrote many books as well with regards to theology and ahkam and so on and so forth. He was a man of great knowledge, one of the thuqat from Kufa. Yes, many of our hadith come from him as well. Another example is the example of wudu. Many of us have heard about this example of wudu. When Ali ibn Yaqtin comes towards Imam al-Kadhim, he says, teach me how to perform wudu. The Imam says to him, perform wudu the way our brothers perform wudu. He says, are you sure? He says, absolutely. Do not perform wudu the way the Shia perform wudu. Perform it the way our brothers perform wudu. One of the servants comes towards Harun. He says, Harun, I have indications to say that Ali ibn Yaqtin is the follower of Imam Kadhim alayhi salam. Harun thinks, he ponders, he reflects. He says, how do I catch him on this? He says, through wudu. I'll spy on him and see how he performs his wudu. They say he was standing in one of his balconies. When he was standing on one of his balconies, he was spying through one of the windows into Ali's room. Ali was performing wudu and he performed the wudu the way the Ahlul Sunnah perform wudu. And he was convinced that Ali ibn Yaqtin is not from amongst the Shia. The Imam would disclose certain information to his companions to preserve their lives. something that was used by fun and play for them to amass their wealth or to have an upper hand over their enemies or anything like that. It was for the preservation of the religion of Islam. They say Ali ibn Yaqtin one day came towards the Imam alayhi salam. And he says to him, Yabna Rasulillah, I'm tired. Listen to this hadith. He says, I'm tired. I can't take it anymore. I'm in the inside of the government. I know what atrocities take place. I can't take it anymore. Imagine Ali ibn Yaqtin, just put yourself in his shoes. In your private life, you're a Shia, but in your public life, you're an enemy of the Ahlul Bayt. You're living a double life. There's empirical research being conducted today and has been done saying that those who live a double life, psychologically, it destroys you. You can't keep it up. Sooner or later, you choose one of the other sides. You can't, for example, flip a switch and be one person and then flip another switch and then expect to be a completely different personality. It doesn't work that way. Our minds can only take so much psychologically. Ali ibn Yaqtin in public, he was the enemy of the Imam. In private, he was the lover of the Imam. It takes a toll on you. Eventually, sooner or later, you have to pick a side and you end up picking a side anyways. So Ali ibn Yaqtin, he says to the Imam, he says, I want to resign, I want to retire. I can't take it anymore. The Imam says to him, La taf'al dhalik. Don't do that. Stay where you are and have patience. He says, Ya Imam, I have inside information. I can't take it anymore. Emotionally, psychologically, it's having a toll on me. The Imam says to him, Ali ibn Yaqtin, La taf'al dhalik. Don't do that. You don't know how much we love you and how much affinity we have for you. Stay where you are and have patience. He says, your job is a pride for us Shi'as. He says to him, Ya Ali. He says to him, Ya Ali, the kafara for your job, it's not a good job, obviously. He says the kafara of your job is to be good towards our brothers when you meet them. The Imam doesn't say sacrifice 90% of your wealth and give it in sadaqah or do this or do that materialistically. He says just be good to the brothers around you. That's your kafara for this job. He says, Ya Ali, if you do one thing, I will guarantee 3 things for you. If you guarantee one thing, only one thing, I will guarantee 3 things for you. He says, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, what is that? He says, whenever you come across a believing brother or a believing sister, whatever it is, whenever you come across a believer, answer their needs, answer their hajat. When you fulfill their hajat, through your maqam, through your job, I will promise 3 things for you. Number one, the sharpness of the sword will never touch your flesh. You'll never be assassinated. Harun al-Rashid will never think twice before killing you. Assassination will never come towards you. Number 2, you will never see the inside of the prisons. So Harun al-Rashid will not persecute you by imprisoning you. And number 3, Ya Ali, poverty will never enter your home. You'll be safeguarded in this world as well as in the hereafter. By doing what? By showing ihtaram to the believers, number 1. And number 2, by fulfilling their hajat. How easy is that? Again, nurture, moral nurturing from the madhab or from the madrasa of Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam. And that's not something that we can belittle or understate at all. And that's something so easy that we can apply in our lives today. Now we come to the second area of the discussion. The power of the knowledge of the Imam over the hearts of the people. Ilm al-Imam has a profound effect in the hearts of the people. You know, they say Harun al-Rashid one day went for Hajj, and Imam Kadhim alayhi salam was there as well. Imam Kadhim was there towards the Kaaba, the walls of the Kaaba. All of a sudden, the people flocked towards the Imam alayhi salam. You see, one thing you have to understand about the Imams, they were celebrities in Medina specifically. In Medina, they were celebrities because of their knowledge. But that knowledge had certain effects in reality as well. So they all came towards the Imam. And when you're looking from far, you could see, the traffic that's there. When the people dispersed after a while, Harun al-Rashid realized and recognized that the Imam was there. So he came towards the Imam alayhi salam and he said to him, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, tell me, did these people come towards you and secretly give you bay'ah? Did they give allegiance to you secretly? The Imam turns to him and he says, see, that's the difference between you and me. You need bay'ah. I don't need bay'ah. When you look at a muluk, when you look at the kings, the sultans of this world, they need obedience from the people. They need bay'at from the people so that they are still in power. But they are kings over the material world. The Imams are kings, but not of the material, but of the spiritual. Knowledge, spirituality, it affects the hearts of the people around them. There's a very interesting hadith narrated by Allama Majlisi in Bihar al-Anwar. Allama Majlisi, we believe that he is one of the most thuqat, credible scholars. So this hadith, by extension, is also credible according to many of the scholars. They say Harun al-Rashid, however much he tried, he could not stop the effect of Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam. Imam al-Kadhim, for majority of his life, was in prison. Yet when he was in prison, the people were still attracted to him. And he was baffled. Why are the people attracted to him? When, and despite the fact that he is cut off from the people, it is because the presence of the Imam has a spiritual effect in the hearts of the people. Don't think that the Imam is in ghaibat, therefore he has no effect in my life. Baba, shaitan has an effect in your life. The Imam also has an effect in your life. The Imam is in prison, yet it affects the people in the community. Harun al-Rashid is baffled. How is this even happening? He makes a decision. We have to assassinate the Imam alayhi salam. So he turns towards his army. And I'm not talking about the general army that was there. The specific, the small percentage of the army, the hardcore mercenaries of his military. Those who killed for gold and silver, the guns for hire. He turns to them. He says to them, I want to kill Musa, Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam. If you kill him for me, the Imam, by the way, is in the dungeons. If you kill him for me, I'll give you and I will reward you with the gold and silver that you've never seen before. When they heard the name of Imam al-Kadhim being the target, each and every one of them, they didn't accept the contract. They all turned around and they said, no, we're not interested. We will not touch this person. This person is untouchable. We're not going to kill him. They all denied the contract, one after the other. What does Harun do? Harun then sends a letter to all of his ambassadors in the non-Muslim states, in the non-Muslim empire. And he tells them, find me mercenaries who know nothing about the religion of Islam, who know nothing about the Prophet of Islam. Bring them towards Baghdad. Because he understands that the Muslims are affected by Imam Kadhim alayhi salam on a spiritual level. No one is willing to kill him, so he seeks help from outside. In the end, they said that they managed to get 50 mercenaries from non-Muslim empires. They came towards the city of Baghdad. When they came towards Baghdad, they came towards Harun al-Rashid. Harun, he greeted them, welcomed them. There was a lot of tarheeb. And of course, he realized that these people, they did not know a single word of Arabic, so they were completely strangers in the lands of Baghdad. There was a translator there, so Harun begins to speak with them. He asks them, which God do you believe in and which prophet do you believe in? They reply, they say, what God? What prophet? God and prophet is not part of our beliefs. Harun al-Rashid says, that's good enough for me. He says, come with me. There is a man in the dungeons. Your job, in exchange for gold and silver, is to enter these dungeons and to kill this person. Just kill him. One man. So what do we have to lose? Each of them, they enter the dungeons. The hadith, do you know what the hadith says? They enter the dungeon of Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam. They see him in salah. They see him in prayers. When they see him in prayers, they come towards the bars, the jail, and they begin to tremble. All of them, they begin to shake. They begin to tremble. They drop their weapons from their hands. The hadith says this. They drop their weapons from their hands and they fall on their knees. And they begin to cry, and they cry, and they cry. The Imam alayhi salam then comes towards one of them and he places his hand on top of his head. And then the Imam begins to speak to him in his own language. And the man just breaks apart. Imagine a hardcore, hard-hearted mercenary. He begins to just break apart. Harun al-Rashid is spying through one of these peepholes, one of the windows that's there. And he realizes what's happening. When he realizes what's happening, he quickly tells the wazir, he says, take them out. Because if they are still in there and they carry on being in there, then there will be fitna within my own lands. Remove them, take them out. The door opens up and they are escorted out. Do you know how they walk out of the dungeons? They walk backwards. They do not dare to turn their backs on the Imam alayhi salam. Each and every one of them, they stand and they start walking backwards. When they leave the dungeons, they mount their horses and they go back into their own cities. Harun al-Rashid is now stuck. Even the foreigners are not willing to kill Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam. Governance of the heart. The Imams have this ability where when you enter their presence, they have this authority over you. They have this attraction, this power of jadibiyya. It attracts and it pulls the heart towards them. And we see the same when it comes to Karbala. You had people who were enemies of Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam, but then the Imam alayhi salam attracts their heart. And they end up giving their lives for the Imam on the 10th of Muharram. Eventually, Imam al-Kadhim is sent from one prison to another, one jail to another. He goes towards the house of Fadl ibn Rabi. Before Fadl ibn Rabi, Harun commands Isa, a man by the name of Isa, to come and slaughter, to come and kill the Imam alayhi salam. He refuses. He says, Harun, this is not a job for me. Harun had a hard time finding someone who would kill Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam. He comes towards the house of Fadl ibn Rabi. He says to Fadl, kill the Imam alayhi salam. Fadl ibn Rabi, internally, he becomes a Shia. Although he was a warden of the Imam alayhi salam, he ends up being the follower of the Imam. He says, how can I kill a person who during the day is in fasting and during the night he is in salah, he is in sujood the whole night? How can I kill such a person? The hardest of hearts becomes soft in the presence of Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam. Eventually, he ends up in the prison of As-Sindi. Harun al-Rashid himself assassinates the Imam. He comes towards As-Sindi and he presents a Sind with a few dates infused with poison. And he tells him, give this towards the Imam alayhi salam. Sind takes the plate of dates and he comes towards the Imam and he presents them to the Imam. And the Imam consumes those grapes. When the Imam consumes the grapes, he realizes that now the body has been affected. The poison begins to affect the body of the Imam alayhi salam. His body begins to deteriorate. 3 days, the Imam suffered in pain. Imagine 3 days. The Imam is isolated from his community, from his family. The Imam does not have any aid, no help. The other Imams, at least their families were with them. But Imam al-Kadhim was Gharib al-Baghdad, isolated from all of the people around him. 3 days the Imam suffered in pain. The Shia, they were given news that the Imam alayhi salam will be released. So what happened? They came after 3 days, they came and they stood outside the dungeons of Baghdad. They were expecting the Imam alayhi salam to come out and to walk out of the dungeons. Instead, when the doors opened, they found people carrying the body of Imam alayhi salam. Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam, his body was carried by these people. حتى ينادي المنادي هذا إمام الرافضي. When they started calling out that this is the Imam of the Rafidis, they begin to cry. The Shias, they begin to cry when they saw that their Imam was assassinated. The Imam, his body was taken towards the bridge of Baghdad and it was abandoned there for 3 days. Harun sent a message to the community that this was the enemy of the Abbasids. His body was abandoned for 3 days. Imam al-Rida alayhi salam, after 3 days, he comes towards the body and he begins to takes the body, he begins to perform the ghusl on the body. Then he performs the kafan on the body. Then he buries the body of Imam alayhi salam in what is known as Kadhimiyya, in the outskirts of Baghdad at the time. We say to Imam al-Rida, Yabna Rasulullah, when you washed the body of your father, did you think about Abi Abdullah? Ya ibn Rasulullah, when you clothed the body of your father, did you think about your grandfather Abi Abdullah? When his body was abandoned in the sands of Karbala, when they left his body for 3 days in the heat of Karbala, when they severed his head from his body and paraded it after city after city. Ya ibn Rasulullah, did you think about your grandfather Abi Abdullah? The narrations say that after the massacre of Karbala, the women were taken in chains and they were taken towards the horses, but they were made to walk through the battlefield, and all of the women, they saw the Shuhada. Ramla saw Qasim, Layla saw Aliyun al-Akbar. The women saw their sons, the women saw their brothers, the women saw their husbands. When they passed, one narrator, he says, La ansa qawla Zainab, he says, Wallah, the women were lamenting and crying, but I will never forget the cries and lamentations of Zainab. Hina marrat bi akhiha, when she passed the body of Abi Abdullah alayhi salam. What did she do? She begins to cry out. He says that when she cried, my heart shattered. It shattered into pieces. What does she say? She says, Ya Muhammada, Salli alayka malaikatu as-sama, hadha Husaynun bil-ara. مرمل بالدماء مقطع بالأعضاء. He says, Ya Rasulullah, this is the body of your grandson who's been abandoned in the plains of Karbala, is drenched in his own blood and his limbs have been severed. It says, Wa Muhammada wa banatuk sabaya. Ya Rasulullah, your daughters have been taken as prisoners. Wa dhurriyatuk muqattala. And your lineage has been severed. Then she turns towards Najaf and she cries out, Wa abata. Oh my father, it was known that whenever someone came towards you, you would fulfill their needs. Whenever someone needed help, you would help them. Oh my father, there was not a single person that left you except that you helped them. Oh my father, when the orphans sought refuge from you, you would shelter them. Oh my father, listen to your daughter when she cries out for your help. Oh my father, listen to these orphans when they cry out for your help. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. ماتم الحسين.
Husayn, Ya 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 Husayn. Hai Imam, Kadhim Imam, 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 Hai Imam. मजदूरों के कांधों पर काज़िम का जनाजा है, मजदूरों के कांधों पर काज़िम का जनाजा है, मजदूरों के कांधों पर काज़िम का जनाजा है, मजदूरों के कांधों पर काज़िम का जनाजा है। बगदाद के कैदी पर जिंदान भी रोता है, मजदूरों के کے کاندھوں پر کاظم کا جنازہ ہے، مزدوروں کے کاندھوں پر
کاظم کا جنازہ ہے۔
اس درد نے تربت میں سجاد کو تڑپایا، زندہ سے نکل کر بھی آزاد نہ ہو پایا، ہے پہلا جنازہ جو ہے پہلا جنازہ جو زنجیروں میں جکڑا ہے، مزدوروں کے کاندھوں پر کاظم کا جنازہ ہے،
مزدوروں کے کاندھوں پر کاظم کا جنازہ۔
زنجیروں کو تکتی ہے، شانوں کو ہلاتی ہے، میت کو بھی اپنی گودی میں اٹھاتی ہے، ایک ہاتھ ہے پہلو پر ایک ہاتھ ہے پہلو پر، لگتا ہے یہ زہرا ہے، مزدوروں کے کاندھوں پر
کاظم کا جنازہ ہے،
مزدوروں کے
کاندھوں پر کاظم کا جنازہ۔
ذرے بھی لہو رو کر روداد سناتے ہیں، قدموں کے نشان اس کے زندہ میں بتاتے ہیں، یہ نظر کے عالم میں یہ نظر کے عالم میں کس طرح سے تڑپا ہے، مزدوروں کے کاندھوں پر کاظم کا جنازہ
ہے،
مزدوروں کے
کاندھوں پر کاظم کا۔
جو لوگ گزرتے ہیں آپس میں کہتے ہیں، گھر والے تو یثرب میں اس قید کے رہتے ہیں، پھر اس کے جنازے پر پھر اس کے جنازے پر یہ کون ضعیفہ ہے، مزدوروں کے
کاندھوں
پر
کاظم کا جنازہ ہے،
مزدوروں کے کاندھوں پر
کاظم۔
کہتی ہے کوئی بی بی ہے وقت مصیبت کا، اب جلد مدینے سے آ جائے رضا جا، بے گور و کفن کب سے بے گور و کفن کب سے بیٹا تیرا بابا ہے، مزدوروں کے کاندھوں پر
کاظم کا جنازہ ہے،
مزدوروں کے کاندھوں پر
کاظم۔
ہر روز ہی جاتی ہے وہ تربت زہرا پر، جا کر وہاں کہتی ہے معصومہ قم رو کر، دادی میرے بابا کو دادی
میرے بابا
کو کیا آپ نے دیکھا ہے، مزدوروں کے
کاندھوں پر
کاظم کا جنازہ ہے،
مزدوروں کے کاندھوں پر کاظم کا جنازہ۔
شبیر کی غربت کا نوحہ یہ سناتے ہیں، سوکھے ہوئے لب اس کے امت کو بتاتے ہیں، اس نے بھی دم آخر اس نے بھی دم آخر پانی نہیں پایا ہے، مزدوروں کے کاندھوں پر کاظم کا جنازہ ہے،
مزدوروں کے کاندھوں پر کاظم۔
गुरबत है तकल्लुम शबीर की गुरबत सी, एक बेटी है यसरब में सुगरा की तरह इसकी, इस वासत मैयत का, इस वासत मैयत का रुख सूए मदीना है,
जो के कांधों पर काज़िम का जनाजा है,
मजदूरों के कांधों पर या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन से बर मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम। अस्सलाम अलैकुम या अबा अब्दिल्लाह, अस्सलाम अलैकुम इब्न रसूलिल्लाह, अस्सलाम अलैकुम व अला जद्दिका व अबीका, अस्सलाम अलैकुम व अम्मिका व अखीका, अस्सलाम अलैकुम व अला तिसअतिल मासूमीन मिन ज़ुर्रियतिका व बनीका, अस्सलाम अलैकुम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू, अस्सलाम अलैकुम या गरीबल ग़ुरबा, अस्सलाम अलैकुम मुइन्नद दुअफ़ाए वल फ़ुक़रा, अस्सलाम अलैकुम या शम्स अश-शमूस, अस्सलाम अलैकुम या अनीस अन-नफूस अय्युहल मदफ़ून बिअर्दि या अबल हसन या अली इब्न मूसा रज़ी व जिस्मी क़ल्बी लकल फ़िदा, अस्सलाम अलैकुम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू, अस्सलाम अलैकुम मौलाना साहिब नस्र व ज़मान सय्यदी अल-अमान 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 मिन शिद्दति ज़मान, अस्सलाम अलैकुम या शरीक अल-क़ुरआन, अस्सलाम अलैकुम या ख़लीफ़त ar-रहमान, अस्सलाम अलैकुम इमाम अल-इंस वल जान, अज्जलल्लाहु तआला फरजक व सहलल्लाहु तआला मखरजक व ज़ुहूरक, अस्सलाम अलैकुम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू। बिस्मिल्लाहिर रहमानिर रहीम। अल्लाहुम्मा कुल्लि वलियका अल-हुज्जत इब्न अल-हसन सलवातुका अलैहि व अला आबाइहि في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا. اللهم صل إلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات، رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة.